I watched in disbelief as the police officer walked up my driveway. Behind him stood Karen Martinez, pointing directly at my house with that smug smile I had grown to hate. She was holding a stack of official-looking papers, waving them in the air like some kind of victory flag. "Officer, this man is trespassing on my family property," she declared with absolute confidence. "I have the legal documents right here proving we own this ranch." My heart pounded as I stood on the porch of the home I had lived in for 8 years. The same porch where I drank my morning coffee every day, watching my horses graze in the pasture I had built with my own hands. The officer looked confused, glancing between Karen and me, then down at the papers she thrust into his hands. That was the moment I realized Karen was not just trying to harass me out of my home, she was trying to steal it completely, and she actually believed she could get away with it. 8 years ago, I bought my dream property, 15 acres of rolling hills in what used to be the quiet countryside, perfect for the horse ranch I had always wanted. The old farmhouse needed work, but I could see the potential. Every morning, I would wake up to the sound of birds instead of traffic. Every evening, I would sit on my porch and watch the sunset paint the sky over my pasture. I spent years transforming that place into something special. I built fences with my own hands, repaired the barn, and renovated the farmhouse room by room. I rescued 3 horses who now lived happy lives on my land. There was something deeply satisfying about this simple life, feeding the horses at dawn, mending fences, feeling connected to the earth in a way city life never provided. The property was my sanctuary. When I had a rough day at work, I would come home and find peace in the rhythm of ranch life. My neighbors were friendly folks who understood rural living. We helped each other during tough times and respected each other's space. Life was good. Then the developers came. A large residential community started expanding toward our area. What had once been farmland and open space slowly filled with cookie-cutter houses and perfectly manicured lawns. The new subdivision crept closer and closer to our rural enclave. With the new development came something I had never dealt with before, a homeowners association. The HOA boundaries expanded to include our area, bringing urban rules to our country lifestyle. Most of us rural folks figured it would not affect us much. We were wrong. The HOA president was a woman named Karen Martinez. She had moved from the city subdivision next to our area, and she had very strong opinions about how our neighborhood should look. Karen was in her 50s, always dressed like she was heading to a business meeting, and she drove a spotless white SUV that looked out of place on our dirt roads. Karen made her first official visit to my ranch on a Tuesday morning in early spring. I was feeding my horses when I saw her SUV pull into my driveway. She climbed out wearing high heels and a designer outfit that was completely inappropriate for a working ranch. "Good morning," I called out, trying to be neighborly. "Can I help you with something?" Karen looked around my property with obvious disapproval. Her eyes lingered on my hay storage area, my work trucks, and the horses who were curiously watching this strange visitor. "I am Karen Martinez, the HOA president," she announced in a tone that suggested I should be impressed. "I am conducting inspections to ensure all properties meet our community standards." I walked over to meet her, wiping my hands on my work clothes. "Nice to meet you, Karen. I am not sure what standards you mean. This is a working ranch." Karen pulled out a clipboard and started taking notes. "That is exactly the problem," she said without looking up. "This agricultural setup does not fit with our community vision. We need to discuss some changes." The way she said agricultural setup made it sound like something disgusting. This was my home, my life, and she was treating it like a problem that needed solving. "I have been here for 8 years, I explained patiently. "This ranch was here long before the HOA expanded to include us." Karen finally looked directly at me, and I saw something cold in her eyes. "Times change," she said simply. "The community is evolving and everyone needs to adapt." She spent another 10 minutes walking around my property, taking photos and making notes. Every few steps, she would shake her head or make disapproving sounds. When she finally left, I had an uneasy feeling that this would not be the last time I saw Karen Martinez. 3 days after Karen's visit, I found the first violation notice taped to my front door. The official HOA letterhead made it look important, but the contents were ridiculous. I was being cited for unsightly hay storage and non-conforming fence materials. The letter demanded I remove my hay bales from site and replace my wooden ranch fencing with HOA-approved materials within 30 days. I called the HOA office to explain that hay storage is essential for horse care and that my fences were perfectly functional. The office secretary told me I would need to speak directly with the president about any concerns. When I called Karen, she was not interested in explanations. "Mr. Thompson, the rules apply to everyone," she said in that clipped, professional tone. "If you want to live in this community, you need to follow community standards." "But Karen, this is a working ranch. Horses need hay. These fences have been here for years." "That is not my problem," she replied coldly. "You have 30 days to comply or you will face daily fines." She hung up before I could respond. The next week brought more violation notices. This time I was cited for having commercial equipment on my property. The commercial equipment turned out to be my tractor and my horse trailer, essential tools for anyone who owns horses. Karen also decided my barn needed to be painted in community-approved colors and that I was only allowed to keep 2 horses instead of 3. Every morning I would see Karen's white SUV driving slowly past my property. She would stop, take photos, and make notes on her clipboard. Sometimes she would get out and measure distances between my fence and the road or count my hay bales. It felt like being watched by a prison guard. The harassment was taking its toll. I had always loved my morning routine of feeding the horses and enjoying the peaceful start to my day. Now I found myself looking over my shoulder, wondering what Karen would find wrong next. The simple joy of ranch life was being poisoned by constant stress and worry. Karen recruited other HOA board members to support her campaign against my property. At the monthly HOA meeting, she presented a slideshow about agricultural noncompliance that was clearly targeted at me. She showed photos of my ranch with red circles around anything she considered problematic. "This type of lifestyle brings down property values for everyone," she told the packed room. "We need to take action to preserve our community standards." Several newer residents who had moved from urban areas nodded along with her presentation. They had paid good money for their suburban dream and did not want to look at what they considered a messy ranch next door. I stood up to defend myself. "I have been here for 8 years. My ranch is well maintained and legal. I am not hurting anyone." Karen smiled that cold smile. "The rules are the rules," she said, "and the rules clearly state that all properties must maintain residential, not commercial or agricultural standards." After the meeting, I tried once more to reason with Karen. I offered compromises. I could move my hay storage to a less visible location. I could plant screening trees along the fence line. I was willing to work with the community. Karen was not interested in compromise. "You can sell and move somewhere more appropriate for your hobby," she suggested. "This community is moving forward with or without you." That night, I noticed strange cars driving slowly past my property. Karen's adult sons, I learned later, along with some other family members. They would park at the end of my driveway and just sit there, watching. When I came outside, they would drive away. The violation notices kept coming. Daily fines started accumulating. Karen threatened legal action if I did not comply immediately with every demand. She made it clear that she had the full backing of the HOA and unlimited resources to make my life miserable. I realized this was not about community standards or property values. This was personal. Karen had decided she wanted me gone, and she was willing to use every tool at her disposal to make it happen. What I did not realize yet was just how far she was willing to go. 6 weeks into the harassment campaign, Karen showed up at my door with what looked like a legal briefcase. This time, she was not alone. 2 of her adult sons flanked her, both tall men in their 30s who looked like they were trying to intimidate me. "Mr. Thompson, we need to talk," Karen announced before I could even greet her. She pushed past me into my living room without being invited, spreading papers across my coffee table like she owned the place. Her sons remained by the door, blocking my exit. "I have been doing some research into this property," Karen began, her voice taking on an official tone, "and I have discovered some very interesting information about the legal ownership." My blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" Karen smiled that predatory smile and pointed to the papers she had spread out. "According to my family research, this land was originally owned by my great-uncle, Miguel Martinez. He purchased mineral rights and property rights here in 1962. I stared at the documents. They looked official with old letterheads and legal language, but something felt wrong about the whole situation. "That is impossible," I said firmly. "I have a clear deed. I bought this property legally 8 years ago from the previous owner." "Ah, but that is where it gets interesting," Karen continued, clearly enjoying this moment. "You see, the sale that transferred this property to the people you bought it from was fraudulent. My great-uncle never actually sold his rights. The family has been looking for this land for decades." She handed me a thick document that looked like a property deed. "This proves that the Martinez family has rightful ownership of this entire 15-acre parcel. The sale you participated in was based on forged documents." I felt dizzy. This could not be happening. "Karen, this is insane. I have legal documents. I have been paying taxes on this property for 8 years. I have a mortgage." "All based on fraudulent paperwork," she said dismissively. "My family is prepared to be generous. We will give you 30 days to vacate the property so we can sort out the legal ownership. You can pursue getting your money back from whoever sold you stolen land." One of her sons stepped forward. "Mom has been trying to be nice about the HOA stuff," he said in a threatening tone, "but now that we know this is family land, things are going to change fast." Karen gathered up her papers and stood to leave. 30 days, Mr. Thompson. After that, we will be forced to take legal action to remove you from our property." They left me standing in my living room, trying to process what had just happened. This woman was claiming that my entire ranch, my home, my life for the past 8 years was all built on a lie. Over the next few days, Karen's behavior became even more brazen. She brought her entire extended family to tour their property. I watched from my window as a dozen people walked around my land, pointing at different areas and talking excitedly about development plans. Karen's sons started showing up regularly, measuring fence lines and taking detailed photos of every building. They acted like they already owned the place, walking wherever they wanted without permission. "Just getting familiar with the family land," one of them said when I confronted him near my barn. "Hope you are making plans to move." The worst part was overhearing their conversations. They were not planning to live on the ranch. They were planning to develop it. I heard them talking about subdividing the land into smaller lots, building luxury homes, maybe even a small shopping center. Karen called me 3 times that week, each conversation more aggressive than the last. "I am being very patient with you," she said during the final call, "but my family wants to move forward with our development plans. If you do not voluntarily leave, we will have to call the police to remove you for trespassing." Trespassing? I could not believe what I was hearing. "Karen, this is my home." "Not according to these documents," she replied coldly. "And if you continue to refuse to acknowledge the legal reality, I will have no choice but to involve law enforcement." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. In just a few weeks, Karen had gone from HOA harassment to claiming she owned my entire property. The woman was clearly unstable, but she seemed completely confident in her scheme. I had no idea how far she was prepared to go to steal my ranch, but I was about to find out. The police showed up on a Thursday morning while I was feeding my horses. I saw the patrol car coming up my driveway and felt my stomach drop. Behind the police car was Karen's white SUV, and she was practically bouncing with excitement in the passenger seat. 2 officers got out of the patrol car, looking confused and a little annoyed. Karen jumped out of her SUV and rushed over to them, waving her stack of papers. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," she said in her most professional voice. "This man has been trespassing on my family property for weeks, and he refuses to leave despite multiple warnings." The older officer, whose name tag read Martinez, no relation to Karen, I learned later, looked at me standing by my horses. "Sir, we got a call about a property dispute. Can you tell us what is going on here?" I walked over slowly, trying to stay calm despite my racing heart. "Officers, I am David Thompson. I own this ranch. I have lived here for 8 years, and I have all the legal documents to prove it." Karen immediately jumped in. "That is exactly what he keeps saying, but look at these inheritance documents." She thrust her papers at Officer Martinez. "This property has been in my family since 1962. This man is living on stolen land." The second officer, younger and clearly new to this kind of situation, looked back and forth between us. Ma'am, property disputes are usually civil matters. We typically do not get involved in ownership claims. But he is trespassing. Karen's voice was getting shrill. I have legal documents proving ownership and he refuses to leave. That is criminal trespassing. Officer Martinez examined Karen's papers while I went into my house to get my deed, mortgage documents, and property tax records. When I returned, both officers were looking skeptical. Sir, your paperwork looks legitimate, Officer Martinez said, handing back my documents. You have a recorded deed, you are paying property taxes, and you have a current mortgage. These are all signs of legal ownership. Karen's face turned red. But you have not looked at my documents carefully. There was fraud in the original sale. This man is occupying property that belongs to my family. The younger officer was clearly uncomfortable. Ma'am, like we said, this appears to be a civil matter. If you believe there was fraud in a property sale, you need to pursue that through the courts, not through criminal complaints. I want him arrested for trespassing, Karen demanded, right now. Officer Martinez remained patient but firm. Ma'am, we cannot arrest someone for trespassing on property they legally own according to recorded deeds and tax records. Your inheritance claim may have merit, but that needs to be settled in civil court. I was documenting everything on my phone, making sure to capture Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. She was packing back and forth, gesturing wildly, and her voice was getting louder and more aggressive. This is ridiculous, she shouted. I am a respected member of this community. I am the HOA president. You should be supporting law-abiding citizens like me, not protecting criminals. The officers exchanged glances. Karen's behavior was becoming a problem. Ma'am, you need to calm down, Officer Martinez said firmly. Shouting at police officers is not going to help your situation. Karen suddenly changed tactics, putting on her sweetest voice. Officers, I am sorry for getting emotional. It is just so frustrating to find out that my family land has been illegally occupied for years. This man has been threatening my family when we try to visit our property. I could not believe what I was hearing. That is completely false. I have never threatened anyone. He told my sons they were not welcome on family land, Karen continued, her voice dripping with fake concern. We feel unsafe trying to visit our own property. The younger officer was taking notes, clearly unsure what to believe, but Officer Martinez had seen enough. Ma'am, I am going to be very clear with you, he said in a tone that showed his patience was running out. Making false statements to police officers is a crime. If you continue to make accusations you cannot prove, you could face charges yourself. Karen looked stunned. This was clearly not going the way she had planned. Ma'am, here is what is going to happen, Officer Martinez continued. You are going to take your property dispute to civil court. You are not going to call us again unless there is an actual crime being committed, and you are not going to harass this gentleman while the legal process runs its course. After the officers left, Karen stood in my driveway for several minutes, staring at my house with pure hatred in her eyes. She was no longer trying to hide her true feelings behind fake politeness. This is not over, she called out as she got back in her SUV. My family will get what belongs to us. That evening, I realized Karen had crossed a line she could not uncross. She had involved law enforcement in her scheme, made false accusations, and shown her true character to neutral witnesses. But I also realized she was far from finished. If anything, her failure with the police had only made her more desperate and dangerous. The next morning, I called a property attorney. I had put off hearing legal help, hoping this nightmare would resolve itself, but Karen's police stunt showed me she was serious about her theft attempt. I needed professional help. Attorney Sarah Chen specialized in property disputes and fraud cases. When I explained the situation, she immediately asked me to bring all my documents to her office. Mr. Thompson, I have seen cases like this before, she said after reviewing my paperwork. Your ownership is absolutely legitimate, but I am concerned about the documents Ms. Martinez showed you. Can you describe them? I told her about Karen's inheritance claim and the official-looking papers she had spread across my coffee table. I would like to examine those documents, Attorney Chen said. In the meantime, I am going to do some research on the Martinez family and this property's history. 3 days later, Attorney Chen called with shocking news. Mr. Thompson, I have some very interesting information about Karen Martinez and her family claims, she said. First, the good news, your property ownership is rock solid. The chain of title is clear going back over 100 years. There was never any Martinez family ownership. I felt a wave of relief, but Attorney Chen was not finished. The concerning news is that Karen Martinez has attempted this exact same scheme in 3 other counties over the past 2 years. She targets rural properties that have been absorbed into HOA jurisdictions, harasses the owners with violations, then claims fraudulent family inheritance to try to force them off their land. My blood went cold. You mean she has done this before? Multiple times, I found court records where she and her family members have made similar inheritance claims on other properties. In each case, the inheritance documents were completely fabricated. Attorney Chen had done her homework. She discovered that Karen's great-uncle Miguel Martinez had never owned any property in our county. In fact, there was no record of him ever living in our state. The documents Karen had shown me were sophisticated forgeries, but they would not hold up under legal scrutiny. There is more, Attorney Chen continued. I believe I know why Karen is targeting your property specifically. My research shows that her family has been pre-selling development lots on your 15 acres to investors. I nearly dropped the phone. What do you mean pre-selling? They have been showing fake ownership documents to potential investors and selling promises of future development lots. They have collected substantial deposits from multiple buyers who think they are investing in a legitimate development project. The scope of Karen's fraud was staggering. This was not just harassment or even simple property theft. This was a complex criminal enterprise involving multiple victims and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent sales. Attorney Chen immediately filed a restraining order against Karen and her family members, prohibiting them from entering my property or continuing their harassment campaign. She also began preparing criminal fraud charges and civil lawsuits for damages. But Karen was not backing down quietly. When she received the restraining order papers, she called me directly. You think you are smart getting lawyers involved, she said, her voice full of rage. My family has invested too much in this project to walk away now. You have no idea who you are dealing with. Karen, it is over, I replied calmly. My attorney has proof that your documents are fake. You need to stop this before you face criminal charges. Those documents are family heirlooms, she screamed. My great-uncle left them to us. You are the one committing fraud by refusing to acknowledge the truth. Even when confronted with evidence of her crimes, Karen was doubling down on her lies. Attorney Chen advised me to document every interaction with Karen and her family. The restraining order violations alone would be enough for criminal charges, but we wanted a complete record of their behavior. Over the next week, Karen called the police 3 more times with false complaints. She claimed I was destroying family property when I repaired a fence. She reported me for illegal agricultural activities when I fed my horses. She even called in a false report claiming I was operating a commercial business without permits. Each false police report was another criminal charge building against her. Officer Martinez was getting tired of Karen's calls and warned her that filing false reports was a felony. Meanwhile, Attorney Chen's investigation was uncovering more victims of Karen's schemes. Property owners in 3 other counties had faced similar inheritance claims from the Martinez family. In each case, Karen had used forged documents and aggressive harassment to try to force people off their land. The pattern was becoming clear. Karen would move into an area, get elected to the HOA board, identify valuable properties, then launch her fake inheritance scheme. Her family would pre-sell development rights to investors while simultaneously trying to force the legal owners to abandon their homes. Mr. Thompson, this is much bigger than just your property, Attorney Chen explained. We are looking at organized fraud across multiple jurisdictions. I am coordinating with prosecutors in 3 counties to build a comprehensive case. Community members started coming forward with their own stories of Karen's bullying tactics. Other property owners shared their experiences with excessive HOA violations and harassment campaigns. A pattern of abuse was emerging that went far beyond my ranch. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hopeful. Karen's carefully planned scheme was unraveling under professional legal scrutiny, but I also knew that cornered criminals could be the most dangerous of all. 2 weeks after Attorney Chen filed our legal paperwork, federal investigators knocked on my door. The FBI was now involved, investigating Karen's multi-state fraud operation. What had started as a neighborhood dispute had become a major criminal case. Special Agent Rodriguez explained that Karen's scheme was even larger than we had realized. Mr. Thompson, the Martinez family has been running this operation for over 3 years across multiple states. They have defrauded investors out of more than $2 million through fake property development schemes. The investigation revealed the sophisticated nature of Karen's criminal enterprise. She would research rural properties that were being absorbed into new HOA jurisdictions, then target the most valuable ones for her fake inheritance claims. Her family members would create elaborate backstories and forge historical documents to support their ownership claims. While harassing the legal property owners, they would simultaneously market the land to investors as upcoming development opportunities. They showed fake ownership documents, fabricated development permits, and even created professional marketing materials for subdivisions that would never exist. The Martinez family collected substantial deposits from investors who believed they were buying into legitimate development projects, Agent Rodriguez explained. When the schemes collapsed, the family would disappear and start over in a new area. Attorney Chen obtained a court order to examine Karen's forged documents. A forensic document expert quickly determined that they were poorly made fakes. The paper was wrong for the claimed time period, the ink was modern, and several supposed signatures were traced from other sources. These forgeries would not fool a competent attorney for 5 minutes, the expert testified. The perpetrators clearly hoped that intimidation and harassment would prevent anyone from examining them closely. But the most satisfying moment came when local news stations picked up the story. Karen's mugshot appeared on the evening news alongside headlines about multi-state fraud schemes and fake property claims. Prominent HOA president arrested in major property fraud case, the news anchor announced. Karen Martinez and several family members face federal charges for defrauding investors and attempting to steal private property through elaborate inheritance schemes. The news coverage was devastating for Karen's reputation in the community. Neighbors who had supported her HOA presidency were shocked to learn about her criminal activities. The same people who had nodded along with her presentations about property values were now calling for her removal from all community positions. The HOA board held an emergency meeting to remove Karen from her presidency and distance the organization from her actions. Several board members publicly apologized to me for supporting Karen's harassment campaign without understanding her true motivations. "We were manipulated by someone we trusted," the new HOA president told the local newspaper. Karen Martinez used her position to pursue personal criminal activities, and we deeply regret the harm caused to Mr. Thompson and other community members. Karen's attempts to flee or destroy evidence were thwarted by the ongoing federal investigation. Agents had already frozen her bank accounts and seized her computers before she realized how much trouble she was in. When FBI agents searched Karen's home, they found detailed plans for developing my ranch into luxury housing. She had architectural drawings, marketing materials, and investor contracts all based on her fraudulent ownership claims. The evidence showed months of premeditation and careful planning for her criminal scheme. They also discovered Karen's communication records with her family members, revealing the full scope of their operation. Text messages showed them discussing how to intimidate me into abandoning my property and how to forge more convincing historical documents. "David is being stubborn about leaving," one message read. "We need to increase pressure and maybe get police involved to scare him off." Another message discussed backup plans if their scheme failed. "If the inheritance angle does not work, we can always claim he is violating environmental regulations or operating illegal businesses." For the first time in months, I was able to sleep peacefully on my own property. The restraining order was being enforced, Karen's family members had stopped their surveillance and harassment, and federal agents were building an ironclad case against the entire criminal operation. My horses seemed calmer too, no longer spooked by strange cars driving slowly past the pasture or unfamiliar people walking around the property taking measurements. The community support was overwhelming. Neighbors who had initially supported Karen's complaints about my ranch now understood that they had been manipulated by a criminal. Several of them stopped by to apologize and offer help with any property repairs needed after months of harassment and stress. Local businesses that had previously been neutral in the HOA disputes now openly supported my right to operate my ranch. The feed store owner put up a sign supporting rural property rights. The veterinarian who cared for my horses wrote a letter to the newspaper defending agricultural activities in the community. Even some of the newer suburban residents began to appreciate having a working ranch in their neighborhood. Children would ask their parents to drive by so they could see the horses, and several families inquired about riding lessons or ranch tour. But the best part was watching Karen's arrogance crumble as the legal walls closed in around her. The woman who had acted like she could manipulate the system to steal my property was now facing federal prison time for her crimes. Her elaborate scheme, built on lies and intimidation, was collapsing under the weight of evidence and professional investigation. Justice was finally within reach. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Karen Martinez plead guilty to multiple felony charges. Wire fraud, mail fraud, filing false documents, extortion, and conspiracy charges would send her to federal prison for up to 8 years. The woman who had once strutted around my property claiming ownership now stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, her previous arrogance completely gone. Her attorney had advised her to plead guilty to avoid an even longer sentence at trial. "Your Honor," Karen said in a shaky voice, "I accept responsibility for my actions and deeply regret the harm I caused to Mr. Thompson and other victims." The judge was not impressed by her sudden remorse. "Ms. Martinez, you orchestrated a sophisticated criminal enterprise that victimized multiple property owners and defrauded investors out of millions of dollars. Your actions were calculated, premeditated, and designed to destroy the lives and livelihoods of innocent people." Karen's family members also faced serious consequences. Her 2 sons received federal prison sentences for their roles in the conspiracy. Her brother-in-law, who had helped create the forged documents, was sentenced to 5 years. The entire criminal enterprise was dismantled and its assets seized to compensate victims. The financial restitution was substantial. Karen and her family were ordered to pay full compensation to all victims, including my legal fees, damages for emotional distress, and punitive damages for their criminal behavior. The seized assets from their fraudulent investment schemes helped fund the restitution payments. But the personal satisfaction went beyond money. Karen's complete downfall vindicated every moment of stress and worry I had endured during her harassment campaign. The woman who had tried to steal my ranch was now losing her own home to pay legal costs and restitution to her victims. The new HOA leadership implemented strict oversight procedures to prevent future abuse of power. They created an appeals process for violation disputes, required multiple board member approval for major enforcement actions, and established clear protections for rural property owners within the HOA boundaries. My ranch became a symbol of resistance against bullying and fraud in the community. Other property owners facing similar harassment contacted Attorney Chen for help, and several successful cases were resolved using the legal precedents established by my fight against Karen. The local news stations followed up on the story 6 months after Karen's sentencing, highlighting the positive changes in the community and the importance of standing up to bullies and criminals. Mr. Thompson's courage in fighting back against this sophisticated fraud scheme protected not only his own property but potentially dozens of other victims, the reporter explained. His willingness to document evidence and pursue legal action was crucial in bringing these criminals to justice. The community's attitude toward my ranch had completely transformed. What Karen had once called an agricultural eyesore was now viewed as a valuable part of the neighborhood's character. Families would drive by to show their children the horses, and several community events were held on my property. The horses seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. They were calmer and friendlier, no longer stressed by the constant presence of hostile strangers. My morning routine of feeding and caring for them had returned to being a peaceful, meditative start to each day. Looking back on the experience, I learned several important lessons about dealing with bullies and protecting property rights. Documentation was crucial. Every violation notice, every phone call, every interaction with Karen and her family members was recorded and became important evidence in the legal case. Professional help was essential. Attorney Chen's expertise in property law and fraud cases made the difference between successful prosecution and continued harassment. Trying to handle such a complex criminal scheme alone would have been impossible. Community support mattered more than I initially realized. Once people understood Karen's true motivations, they rallied around the principle of protecting property rights and supporting victims of fraud. Most importantly, I learned that standing up to bullies and criminals is not just about protecting yourself. By fighting back against Karen's scheme, we prevented her from victimizing other property owners and exposed a criminal enterprise that was operating across multiple states. The peaceful ranch life I had worked so hard to build was not only restored but was now stronger and more secure than ever. The legal precedents established by our case provided protection for other rural property owners facing similar harassment. Every morning, I still wake up to the sound of birds instead of traffic. Every evening, I still sit on my porch and watch the sunset over my pasture. But now I also wake up knowing that justice was served and that criminals who try to steal people's homes and livelihoods will face serious consequences.